Don't make fun of my summer pastimes.
Summer, winter, spring.
Tend to go out a lot more during the summer. I do believe we are live with you once again, beautiful community, with myself, Justice Bartlett, consciousness provocateur, writer, healer, witch, matriarch, motherfucking mouthy woman.
Ain't that the truth?
And my co-host, Greg Friedman.
Host of Inner Journey with Greg Friedman on KXFM 1047, broadcast from Laguna Beach, California. Guide, mentor, healer, teacher, cohort in seeing how much trouble I could get into just to see different ways to get out of it.
Apparently we're feeling kind of risky today, kids. So if you are joining us live today, we would love to have you participate in this conversation. There's a nifty little comment bar over here on the side where you can share your thoughts, feelings, questions, emotions, irritation. Let us know if we're making sense or if we're just gone way off the deep end with our nonsense. Because
and just say hello.
These conversations are also about you and about building community.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah, and just say hello if you feel like it. All right, darling. So we went back and forth with today's topic a bit, didn't we?
Just a bit.
What's
real? Well, we landed on this topic. Fuck your love language.
You mumbled that part. Say it again, will you?
Fuck your love language. Talk triggers to me, baby.
Hey, Julie. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for saying hi.
Oh, you can see comments. I can't see comments. Well, that's good. I'm glad one of us can see.
Oh, you can't see any comments?
I don't see any comments. Yeah.
Oh. And Lori as well. Thanks, Lori.
Oh, you might have to monitor the comments then if I can't see them. Shit.
Uh-oh. All right, fuck your love language. Let's start with that part. What does that mean to you?
Okay, so I don't take a lot of time investigating things that either offend or bore me. And I have always been both offended by and bored by the concept of learning some of like the 5 love languages, which are what, Greg? See, I don't even know. It's so boring to me. I can't even articulate what they are.
It's acts of love, touch, words of love. It goes on, but it doesn't matter. The bottom line is all those 5 love languages are all of our love languages.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is different times we're going to want different ones more than another. And so, you know what? What's your love language? What are you feeling right now? That's your love language. And in the same way, thanks for joining us, page 2. And Lori loves the topic, by the way. So we have all these love languages that alternate depending on what mood we're in, what's going on with us. Sometimes, as much as I may love to be touched, I'm like, if you come near me, I am raw, and it's going to feel more like I'm getting smacked instead of hugged. So the flip side is what we came up with that's really, really important to talk about. Will you elaborate a bit?
So I think most of you who are turning in are at this point going to be familiar with the concept of what a trigger is. It's when, something either internally or externally sort of rubs against something tender and we feel activated. So underneath every single trigger is some kind of need. It's some sort of need, or it's some place of vulnerability that is being activated. And that's why it feels raw. That's why it feels like we want to defend it, like we want to protect it. So when we're getting triggered by other people, is usually an indication of something that's actually really vital and juicy and important to pay attention to. And we're not very skillful at navigating triggers individually. It doesn't seem like so much for most of us, but throw it in like a conversational, and it gets that much harder because you're dealing with the possibility of catalyzing multiple triggers within multiple individuals, and then you really kind of have a shit show, right?
Yeah, so basically what I heard you say is that often we have enough trouble recognizing our own triggers for ourselves, of ourselves, and then the more people we enter into that dynamic, especially the more intimate they are, and therefore the more exposed we are with them, the more it becomes, for those of us who are unaware or learning how to be more aware, it becomes very precarious. And we could wind up getting really, really pissed off at those of us, those that are close to us, because we're so naked, we're so exposed. It's not that they're doing anything more than anybody else would, but we are in such a different place of vulnerability with them that it is vital that we learn how to know what our triggers are, know how to navigate our triggers, and then know how to communicate that so that when we're triggered, it could wind up being a healing experience instead of cutting that wound even deeper and bleeding over yourself and one another.
It's a lot what you just laid out there. And there is a distinction that I want to make between navigating triggers with someone who is healthy and safe versus putting yourself into situations where you are being triggered because you are not actually safe. And it's an important distinction because we can wind up in relationship dynamics where we are triggered for good reason, where our instincts are firing up, where we're not feeling respected, we're not feeling safe, seen, or held, and not in a temporary sort of passing way, in a kind of more dehumanizing, or even in a predatory or in an abusive situation. And these are not necessarily the kind of triggers that we want to probe and explore. These are the kinds of triggers that we want to acknowledge and validate and protect. So the kinds of triggers that we do want to explore are when we are physically safe. And I think a wonderful thing to start as a check-in with any kind of trigger is to actually, first and foremost, calibrate our physical safety. Right?
Oh, yeah. Go on, please.
Well, if someone's getting in your face, or if someone's calling you a piece of shit, or if someone's, telling you that you're worthless, or if someone is actually physically threatening you, that is not the appropriate time to say, I think I'm going to explore this trigger with this person.
You think?
It's important to make this distinction, especially, right?
Yes.
Especially with all the bullshit polarity dynamics coaching that is going on out there, that is training women to fawn within the intimate containers of their relationships rather than to pay attention to their intuition and instincts and fucking protect themselves.
So I want to say this because I want it to be in a masculine voice as well. If you are feeling threatened physically, mentally, spiritually, in any sense of the word threatened, your job and your only job is to make sure your being is safe. After that, any work can go on. But until that is first and foremost considered and achieved, then it is not the appropriate time or place or exploration for that moment. You need, and this doesn't just, and people don't understand this, this is not just for women. There are so many men that are abused these days in all kinds of different ways. Your job is for your safety. I say this strongly to women, but I also say this because men need to know there is no shame in your game from removing your booty from a dangerous situation. It doesn't make you less of a man or dickless or ballless. It makes you a rock star. And the same thing with a woman. If you take the time to take care of yourself, that's what makes you a rock star. That's what gives you opportunities to flourish. But if you don't, you're subjugating yourself. And what you are doing is bit by bit, and sometimes in huge chunks, you are eroding yourself. And erosion is a very interesting word because most often it's something that happens granule by granule. Once in a while, a big chunk goes in, but you need to remember that erosion causes chasms. And the Grand Canyon is caused by erosion. And these chasms can be small or they can be large. But what that is, that chasm in a human is a trauma wound. And you are precious. Every single one of us is. And your job is to walk in recognition of that. And what I mean by that is making sure your being is safe. Even if it pisses off the other person more, to remove yourself. Get safe first. Sorry about the tangent.
No, it's not a tangent. It's really important because we're talking about this sort of in a spiritual as well as relational language. And I think regrettably that often the spiritual can become very impractical, and we can talk ourselves into perpetuating experiences in the interest of spiritual growth, i.e. trauma bonds, whatever people call, like, I can't even say it, it gives me such a fucking hairball, twin flame relationship. There, I said it, I got it out. Oh my God, that hurt. It hurt my neurons.
It did look like you were coughing up a fur ball, but okay.
Okay. Trauma bonding, twin flaming, whatever. To continue an abusive cycle in the name of spiritual growth is spiritual, physical, relational, emotional abuse. Bottom line.
Yeah.
Period.
I don't give a shit, and trust me, and this is one of my rants that I go on incessantly. Gurus, psychologists, social workers, guides, provocateurs, we're all fucked up assholes. The more you recognize that, the more you're going to make sure that no matter what anybody else does, you will look at this person that you're interacting with as a flawed human being. So you do not hand over the keys to your life to anybody else, not in the name of spirituality, not in the name of romance, not in the name of business or comfort. Your life, again, is precious, and it is your job to act in reflection of that truth.
Absolutely.
Now, you talked a little bit about twin flames and trauma bonding. Could you elaborate first on trauma bonding a little bit, please?
So a trauma bond is what happens when we find ourselves attracted to another individual who has similar wounding and compatible or oppositional coping strategies to our own that actually exacerbate the wounding process. And here's the real fucking kicker. This can happen in a conscious container, in a conscious relationship. What is absent is a trauma bond, is the willingness and skillfulness to tend to that woundedness.
Talk to that, because this is something that we've experienced recently. It's the way that trauma is addressed and the way it is communicated makes the distinction, the difference between something that is a shadowy, detrimental downward spiral or something that is actually contributing to your growth through the dynamic of a relationship.
So I would say that both parties, as we already addressed and made first and foremost and primary to this conversation, have an interest in being responsible for their own and each other's safety. So safety is the primary objective.
Yep.
That's going to probably look like needing to slow a conversation down, needing to take space, needing to actually come back to the physical body. When I get triggered, like I freeze, but I also I react and deflect. And knowing that about myself, I know that I need to pause. I need to pause in myself to kind of calibrate how I'm actually feeling and how I need to take care of my own feelings first. And then I probably also need to ask for space in the conversation. And that might even just be like, okay, I'm gonna breathe before I respond, or please give me like a moment to digest this. And that allows my body to know that it's safe.
Stop there. You just gave an incredibly vital tool. You just asked for what you needed. Could you repeat what that was? That's really frigging important.
So I've learned for myself in processing intense communication in particular that I need to breathe and I need to take space.
And you asked for it. That's the thing that's really vital. Yeah. Okay. So.
Well, and that's the trigger, right? Like in that moment where I'm either feeling defensive or I'm feeling like I'm going to shut down, I'm triggered. So what's happening with this trigger that's presenting itself that needs my attention? There's a need. What do I need? I fucking need space. I need to breathe. I need space. I've done the work to know this about myself, but it's worth it for all of you who are listening to figure that out. And your triggers, this is it. A trigger is a fight or flight response. However you tend to react to being threatened is what is going to be sort of in a microcosm present within your trigger. You're either going to fly off the handle and want to type or yell your response, fight. You're going to want to withdraw and pretend like nothing's happening, like flee, right? Or you're going to freeze, like you don't. And here's the thing with freeze that I've found, particularly when we're younger, if we don't feel like there's a right or wrong answer that we can give, and it's sort of, we're so used to kind of being invalidated, we freeze as a means of trying to prolong the situation to give ourselves more time, right? And it will give us more time. But a freeze can also be a way of going stagnant, of just kind of stopping, of avoiding. And that's not going to be beneficial for communication in the long run. So recognizing if you freeze, you need a pause. My freeze means I need a pause, I need a breath, and I need to be able to communicate that.
So that's vital to know how you react. And I guarantee if you look back at some of the knockdown dragouts that you've been in, you're going to be able to see, oh, I did this, I felt this way, I needed this, but I didn't take care of that.
Right.
Whatever those things are, it is vital to look back and do, for lack of a better way of saying it, an autopsy on it. Because the more you could recognize how I act, it's going to indicate what I need. Now, I want to talk to, I asked you to go back to, hey, I need some space. What you need to understand is that you're not in a vacuum. You're not in a bubble. You're dealing with somebody else that's activated. So you asking for space while somebody else is at DEFCON 4 may need to be repeated a couple times even for somebody that is hugely willing and interested in supporting you in this, they have their own stuff going on. They have their own trauma that's activated. So that it is vital for you to go, one, I'm going to say it, whatever I need.
Right.
Two, I'm going to have enough compassion and understanding that I'm going to recognize that it may take a little bit of stepping back and breathing into this and taking it down a notch in order for that to be achieved. And that doesn't make one or the other person lesser or evil. But we're wound up at that point. You know, it's fortunate when you get together with somebody and you're both, and then you go, oh shit, you both go, we're both at DEFCON 4, we're going to take a step back from this shit. Because, do you mind? So, we've done that. And we went at each other, and then we took a break. Then we went at each other again later that day, and then we took a break for a couple of days. And that taking a break for a couple of days facilitated having one of the most wonderful conversations I've ever had. Yeah. And productive. And if not for that, if either of us had been aggressive to the point of insisting on continuing or not respecting the other one's space, then this would have been an atomic bomb. Because in case you haven't noticed, neither Justice nor I have those subtle, demure kind of personalities.
Well, it's funny. It's like the people that I shared with that, you know, are like my close people. I'm like, yeah, we're doing a thing. I'm like, like when they went to check on me later, they're like, okay, so how are you? How did it go? I'm like, oh, we're fine. We're just a couple of intense motherfuckers learning with each other. Like, seriously. Like, they're like, oh, yeah, okay, of course, that makes sense. Like, yeah, it does. And there was a point in our conversation once we had sort of gotten past that initial, like, really sort of kind of prickliness where I was like, okay, let's breathe. And you were like, oh my God, I didn't even realize I was holding my breath, right?
Yeah. And I'm usually really, really good about that. And the fact that she pointed that out and I was able to see that reflection, well, I was so grateful for you for doing that first. And secondly, it helped me recognize where I was still, how immersed emotionally I was in the entire event. So go ahead.
I'm just thinking about, not to go on a tangent, but like the way for me I can tell if I'm actually here and present is I notice that my voice is coming out of my body instead of out of my head. It's coming from lower, rather than like just kind of forcing its way out of my throat, or it's like, you know, it feels sort of dissociated and disconnected. And I was thinking about these love languages: acts of service, touch, right? Like they're all forms of communication, right? And there are two things that make communication, regardless of what your love language might be, work. There is the active process of engagement, and then there is the space between. And without the space between, it's not actually communication, it becomes enmeshment. So no matter how much you love to cuddle and touch someone, if you're always fucking up on their shit, you're gonna get enmeshed.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? So Paige just said that vulnerability, humility, and grace are such beautiful and powerful expressions. Absolutely. However, it took us trusting ourselves enough to have space, to give space to one another, to take space for ourselves. And then even at that place when we were ready to talk, it was sort of like a dance where we were starting, there's a push and a pull, and you could feel an energetic until it felt safe enough just to be in that place of vulnerability and humility. And I don't want to speak for you, but I'll speak for me. the more vulnerable I was, it was simultaneously scarier and more comforting, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And
there's Grace.
It definitely does. And the way that I experienced that was like an actual like physical softening in my body. Like, okay, I don't have to like take anyone's head in this moment. Everything's okay. No one's
Go ahead,
about
try to take my head, girl. Go ahead. What you got?
Oh fuck. But this is it, guys, right? Like this is that trigger space, and you may not be gracious in that moment. You might not, you know? And I think it's important to have compassion for the part of you that is not able to function graciously. And it's important to have compassion for the other party who may in that moment not be able to function graciously. What you're learning when you're meeting someone or when you're interacting over time is habitually what is their orientation. Do they want to show up graciously? Do they want to show up respectfully? Are they interested in your cares and in your feelings and your needs? Is that reciprocal? Is that mutual? And if that is a shared orientation between the two of you, regardless of whether it's a personal, romantic, friendship, family, business relationship, then there's a reason to move through the shit. If they are not gracious, if they are constantly demeaning of your feelings, if they're gaslighting you, if they're invalidating your reality, your feelings, your expressions, or your needs, then there is not a shared reciprocity, there is not a shared mutuality, there is not a valid orientation for that relationship to move towards. And the distinction is, are these triggers worth exploring, is whether or not there's mutual respect and safety.
Yes, absolutely. By the way, Paige said she loves dancing with you.
I just love her. I just fucking love her. She's just one of the most amazing humans ever.
I'm going to put this out to any of you guys who are listening. If you have questions about triggers, if you have issues around triggers or trying to figure out how to identify your own triggers, ask everything and anything. We're all groovy. The more y'all ask, the more interesting all of this is. So, and also, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of the things that I see as a constant theme developing is that first, second, and third, safety. And that there's this weird fine line between having compassion for somebody else but taking care of your being and giving enough opportunity to de-escalate things, and then that line where you recognize de-escalation ain't gonna happen, so I need to remove my body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's a tough thing to figure out. It's like, when is the right time? And, you know, I just went on a rant about this on the show last Sunday. Everybody talks about trust your gut, trust your gut, trust your gut. That's a yes and a no for me, because sometimes your gut is giving you a trauma response. Sometimes your gut is giving you a grounded response. And so to trust your gut implicitly, it's like, you know what? I trust justice implicitly. However, that doesn't mean I'm going to abdicate my own feelings for it. I'm going to do something to actively check in and do my best to distinguish how I'm operating, where I'm operating from, and what my driving intention or motivation is with it. And that's what I ask people to do when they're checking in about trusting their gut. Is this a trauma response, or is this my gut telling me to get the fuck out of here? And they're both valid.
Yeah, same. So I would say, like, I love that you brought that up. I want to pause this, want to listen. So I think what is relevant to bring up as a topic here is instinct injury, because most of us have been socially conditioned out of that actual authentic gut response. And what that has been replaced with is being pleasing and performative to some greater or lesser degree. And it usually goes back to childhood, because as kids, like, we're much more primal. We're kind of little beasts sort of running around, and like the goal of our parents should be to socialize us enough to the degree where we can function in society, but not to tame our wild. And that rarely happens for us. Usually it becomes the reverse. It is tame the wild so that they fit in. And that usually includes ignoring those gut impulses because we need to continue in the good graces of our primary caregivers or of our family. So we talked about this before. We'll talk about it again. We'll bring it up. Fawning, people pleasing, for anybody who doesn't know what fawning is often the mechanism that develops from instinct injury, and that is a trauma response. So if your gut is giving you misleading information, it is likely because you're operating from that trauma place, and you're going to be geared towards that potential people pleasing as opposed to self-pleasing, as opposed to even like self-preservation above self-pleasing.
So now there's another fine line, because people pleasing is one end of the spectrum of a trauma response. The other one is almost like flipping a switch and you become a cactus.
For sure.
And that shuts everything out, including those things that can nourish and feed not only your soul, but your body as well. And
if you've done one habitually, you're likely to move to the opposite end of the spectrum as you're sort of learning how to come back to a balance. So for me, like, I've done a lot of people pleasing. You talked about erosion. I thought that was such a beautiful way to articulate the process of compromising yourself long-term within different relationship dynamics, right? So
absolutely.
Self-compromise of anything that is important, that is a solid core value to me, is not acceptable. Negotiating is acceptable. And being consideration of another being is absolutely an imperative if you want to have any kind of relationship with anyone but yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to read a couple responses.
Yay.
Paige said, if I get a gut response that's followed by an immediate familiar storyline, I check in further. That is friggin' phenomenal. It is huge, and most people don't. And there are times, I'll tell you straight up, that I'm conscious and present enough to do that, and there are other times I'm locked and loaded, and that train has left the station, and it's got huge momentum behind it, and I'm just going to friggin' bowl over anything that gets in my path. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying we're human, and sometimes we're capable of doing that, and sometimes we're not. And be kind with yourself when you're not, and be just hugely complimentary when you are. Just look at that and go, damn, bitch, look at me. Because it's pretty freaking phenomenal. Do you want to say anything to Paige?
I adore I don't mind saying this because she says it all the time on her wall. Like, she's one of mine. So like, this is this is the long-term effect of like knowing and getting to work with me, is like forming these relationships where you get to go deeper into yourself. Like, that's the goal, and that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about practicing that, whether you're practicing that in a therapeutic container with somebody as a healer or as a guide, you're practicing that as a friend, you're practicing that as a business partner. I think why it is the hardest with romantic entanglement is that it wakes up the same kind of hormonal responses that we experienced in our childhood. Our romantic partners and potential interests activate those hormones in ways that other relationships don't. So we're really kind of dealing with a different beast when we're talking about that depth with that intensity of that kind of interaction, because your hormones are doing all kinds of really wild, fun, and interesting shit besides like your mind, your body, your emotions, everything else, like trying to sort of give context to your reality experience. Like it's a whole different game. It's a whole different game.
Yeah. Paige gave you a big old heart emoji. Yeah. And then Sandy said, after last week's talk between you both, I unpacked the relationship I was in and realized the guy I was with was disorganized attached. I'm in the process of disentangling from them. It's so uncomfortable, but worth it. I thought I was safe. Hold on, it says see more, so I have to see more. I thought I was safe in the uncomfortable feeling as I was, now this is huge, as I was so used to feeling unsafe.
Lord.
I thought that would get you.
Familiarity is a motherfucker, and that's all I'm gonna say for right now. It will fuck you so hard. You will think you are being fucked well and properly, and you are not. You are being fucked poorly and shittily and right back into what's familiar.
Yeah. That's one of my other big ones that I go over and over is the comfort zone is a misnomer. It's bullshit. It's actually not comfortable. It is a familiar zone, which means that there is a familiar level of pain and suffering that you accept. And that's what we call comfort zone. And what's even more fucked up is there's a familiar level of happiness that we accept. And if it goes beyond that, we tend to get very, very agitated. And it's vital to go beyond. There's a saying, I think I talked about it a couple weeks ago. In order to discover new lands, it is vital to lose sight of shore for a long, long time. That feeling when you are out of sight of the mainland, but you still don't have sight of any other landmass, makes you feel very, very small. It makes you feel very, very alone, which is exactly what you need, because you need to let go of what was in order to pick up what is becoming.
Just want to breathe with that. It's really fucking important. That is the actual, like, people talk about jumping realities, like in a quantum sense or like spiritual sense. Well, I'm just going to pop into this reality or this parallel world over here. Like, you don't understand what it takes to fucking do that. Like, I'm sorry, it was not like flipping through a book and be like, oh, this world looks so much better. I'm going to pop over here. No. What it takes to be able to do that, to actually shift your reality, to shift a paradigm in that way, is you need the energy to be able to do it. And in order to muster that energy, you have to dismantle everything that you're currently fucking running. And that is so exceedingly uncomfortable, because in the dismantling of that, what will tend to happen is the people who were functioning with you in relation to that configuration will be activated, will be triggered, or will fall away. And that hurts. And the only way to be really genuine and honest about the process is to fucking grieve your guts out, and it sucks. And you can say, well, I'm just fine with just elevating myself and letting it work, but you're not really doing it.
Yeah. Fuck that.
You can say that. You can tell yourself that, but what I will tell you is that if that is your approach, you didn't fucking do it. Because it hurts to let go of who you were, and it hurts to let go of the parts of yourself and the way that those parts functioned and related to and even loved and even deeply loved other people. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. It's not easy. It's why people stay in, it's why people continue on in family dynamics that are really harmful and toxic to them, that keep them small and spinning their wheels. It's why people stay in unsatisfying marriages for 30 plus years, and knowing full well that their heart, their need, their soul, the juice, the joie de vivre is not being met, right? That's why they stay, because they don't want to fucking grieve. They don't want to have to go through that death process while they're still alive, because our society, we are not fucking trained how to do this.
Amen, sister. Yeah, that is absolutely true. I'll tell you, for me personally, last year I went through a metamorphosis. And here's what I discovered. Everybody talks about the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. Ain't that cute? Ain't that sweet? Everybody talks about that. Nobody, and I think we need to do this more in society, nobody talks about that place that once that caterpillar has gone into that cocoon, it dismantles completely. It turns into fucking mush. And let me tell you from personal experience, fucking mush sucks. It is hard. It's hurt. It hurts. You're neither who you were nor who you're going to be. And it is, if you talk to me, I would rather go, if it's a concept of heaven, hell, and purgatory, send me to heaven, send me to hell, but fuck you in purgatory. And that's exactly what happens when you do that middle ground. So that's the beginning part of what Justice was talking about. Then, not only that, you turn into this gorgeous butterfly, and do you think all your caterpillar friends are going to be sitting there cheering you on, going, look at how gorgeous you are, look what you've done? What they're going to do more often than not is go, what the fuck's up with you? What makes you think you could do that? Why'd you do that? Why didn't you say, well, aren't I good enough for you? And have all kinds of shit that want you to remain who you were. Refer back to, we want you to be in our familiar zone, our comfort zone with us, because when somebody leaves, that tells us that there's something more out there and we don't have deniable plausibility anymore. Plausible deniability.
There's another phase that there's two things. There's things.
Really?
There's things I want to say. So that process, that goo, that soupy goo that caterpillars turn into, is called imaginal cells.
I love that. Love that.
Isn't that brilliant? Okay, so when you turn into soupy goo, you're in that imaginal cell state. You're in that dreaming place of like dreaming what you're going to become. And just like the caterpillar, like the butterfly, there's a blueprint there for that emerging. But there's also a struggle. They have to struggle out of that cocoon. And here's the thing, and this is why we need to be wise and mindful about not enabling each other as well, as even as guides, coaches, healers, whatever. That struggle is what forces the liquid out of the central body into the wings. And if you come along and you open open the cocoon and likes to help the butterfly out too much, it won't develop. The wings won't develop. So there is a necessary amount of struggle involved in this process. And, you know, all these people who tell you like that if you're struggling, you know, like you're doing it wrong, just surrender. It's like, there are times to surrender and there are times to fucking struggle like your life depends on it, because maybe it does. And there's another phase where the butterfly has to sit on its former, you know, its little corpse, its little
carcass.
Its carcass, yeah. And let its wings dry. And its wings have to dry. And, you know, from a standpoint of like, you're not supposed to ever touch a butterfly's wings anyways, but like if its wings don't dry, if it doesn't have that space around itself to really kind of to complete that process, then it doesn't fully develop and mature, and it can't fly in that circumstance either. So this analogy from metamorphosis is so beautiful and so powerful on so many different layers and levels. But there are all of these more nitty gritty components to the process that most people don't talk about. So I'm really glad you brought it up.
You know, that seems like a good dovetail into what Paige just said. I'm curious how you're going to respond to this. She says, the goo is uncomfortable, but I love it.
I fucking love Paige. It is uncomfortable. It's you know what it reminds me of is Brene Brown talks about being in the messy middle, and I talk about this a lot, and how we love stories, we love our exciting, adventurous beginnings, right, to our stories, and we love these victorious, like, romantic endings. But nobody wants to talk about the fucking middle. And the middle is the goo. And the middle is where the majority of the stuff is happening, right? And it is messy and it is awkward and it's uncomfortable. And it doesn't have that, oh, new beginning feel. And it doesn't have that, ooh, victorious ending feel. It has this, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing feel.
I call that Thursday. Okay.
It is Thursday, baby. That's why we're here. The I don't know what the fuck I'm doing is so God blessedly vulnerable, it hurts.
See, now that's why I want to talk to Paige. The goo is uncomfortable. Yeah, it is. But I love it. Respect it, I can see. Loving it makes me go, oh, baby. Buckle up, because there are going to be definitely times, days, periods where you are not going to love it, and that's okay. You know, it's there. Pain is inevitable, and suffering is an option, and it's going to hurt. It's just going to straight up hurt some days. And if you could love it in the middle of hurting it, you know, I personally am not a masochist, but you know, whatever rocks your boat, baby. It's all good. But understand it is a period that is necessary and can be appreciated. And just like any other thing, it could wind up becoming a addictive or dependent kind of experience.
Okay, so what things that you just said, and in some regard, I think women have an advantage to doing this kind of work over men, specifically because of this reason I'm about to elicit.
Okay.
Our menstrual cycles. Because it is messy, it is deconstructive, it is painful, and once you get into alignment, I love it. I fucking love it. It feels so good. I can be writhing on the floor in agony and feeling like I'm expelling the curses of my ancestors. And I feel so grateful knowing that my body knows how to do this process for me and with me. And yet it is so messy and it's so painful and it's so uncomfortable, and I love it. And unlike men biologically, as long as we're in that fertile phase of our life as women, we get to do it once a month. And it is something that we don't have a choice in. It's not something, I'm not gonna process this month. Your uterus is like, the hell you're not. I'm sorry.
We got news for you.
Exactly. Whereas men, you guys, you do have a little bit more of a choice. I know you have your cycles as well, but I know that it's not as pronounced as our physical menstrual cycle, or as you know, and with a lot of us women, that's very connected to lunar movements as well. That's what it is, moon, menstruals, you know, that whole cycle. So there is and in ancient times, this is why, like around winter solstice, they would take the men out into the wilderness, and this is why you guys needed these rituals that you don't get anymore as men, why you needed to go out into the woods, why you needed to go out and pray, why you needed to go out and be stripped down and left naked and afraid in the fucking forest at night. Because it strips your egos down in a similar way that us being forced to bleed once a month does to us.
See, now, this is one of the things that we talk about. We are putting together this workshop on sacred feminine, sacred masculine. I sit here and I listen to you and I go, holy shit, I didn't realize that. I just learned a ton and I love that. So it's really good to understand that teachers are learning as they teach. Mm-hmm. And that was huge for me personally, so thank you. Yeah. Lori has a question that I think is really, really important for both of us to answer.
I want to read it. Let's read it.
You want to read it?
Maybe.
Oh.
I open it up. I'm like, oh, okay. This Lori says, I had to open my phone because I want your comments. I'm hungry for your feedback. Lori says, so much truth to what you are both saying. I can't keep up with responding. I'm going through all this. It hurts so much, but it hurts more not to do it. It's not a straight line. It takes as much time as it takes, learning as I go.
Will you do me a favor, please, and read her comment under that as well? Because that's the one that I think is really, really vital.
I don't know if I have it. I don't know if
she asks, is there an end?
Oh, is there an end?
Okay, that was an ominous response, girl.
I haven't found an end yet. What I have found, I have found comfort. I have not found an end. I have found a place where there is more comfort and where the resilience feels less triggering. It feels more sustaining than it does like it's being shuffled around as much. How could there be an end? You're still alive, you know, and
you think death ends that?
Well, and then there's that.
Okay, I want to jump in and give my 2 cents if you don't mind.
Please.
The answer is there an end? Yes, but not in the traditional Western way of thinking. What I mean by that is we have cycles that we go through, and the cycle leads to another event that leads to another event. Think of it almost like interconnected springs going up and up and up. And as you elevate, there is an end to different phases. But is there an end? No. There is only evolution or de-evolution. That's it. And you can take every single event as an opportunity to grow, or to stay stagnant, or to go backwards. Now, one of the things that I learned through working with justice a lot is the thing that facilitates and inspires growth more than anything is laughter. And we go back now to the love languages and the trigger languages. You may be triggered, but if you could get to the place where you guys are laughing through this as you're crying through this, you're home, baby. You are absolutely home. And it is really, really important that we learn to breathe into it. It's like an end. You want to know if there's an end? It's sort of like as you exhale. Did that end? Well, yes and no, but you're about to inhale again. And it's very similar to that.
Well, and there's something that you said like, about the spiral, and I think this is relevant in actual like polarity and in a true masculine feminine dynamic relationship of the energies, is that they create the cycles and the seasons together, right? And
absolutely.
the acknowledgement of that takes us into a deeper relationship with these energies, with the masculine, with the feminine, with the co-creative powers that we recognize as such. It's deeper, and it's not about what is viewed as traditional masculinity, and it's not what is viewed as traditional femininity, which from a large sociological standpoint, masculinity has really kind of moved into this sort of dominator archetype, and it is a trauma response from the masculine, being that given that context. And with the feminine, what is traditionally associated with femininity is more often than not fawning. So when you see these sort of qualities as being upheld without this as social performative tactics for getting to know each other, as opposed to these deeper, more sacred, more primal spiral dynamics that are actually responsible for the creation and the co-creation of the life force. This is the difference between the healthy polarity and the bullshit polarity. So I just need to make that distinction. It's really important.
You good now?
Well, and it's not gender biased either, because we house.
That's where I was going to go. Yeah.
We house these energies within us.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to reiterate, is that when she's talking about masculine and feminine, these days we are transitioning this, we're changing this, but where we've been the last decade, maybe even 2 decades, is that the masculine has been looked at as the aggressor and the feminine is more of the fawn. And what has happened is a lot more of women have taken on the masculine attributes, and a lot more of the men have taken on the feminine attributes, and we are out of balance. Because the idea is to lead with who we are as we are, and then incorporate that without negating or disregarding the other aspect of who we are. That was a lot of words. Did that make sense?
Well, and I can give you specifically, you spoke about how when we were in, sort of moving through the intensity of our conversation recently, how you felt when you chose to get more vulnerable in that process. And it was you as a man choosing to be vulnerable that allowed me to move into my vulnerability, that allowed my yes to actually emerge, because I was in full on prickly pear justice state, and
oh yeah, you were.
It doesn't budge. It doesn't budge. That form of justice, it doesn't fucking budge.
It budged.
It budged, but it budged because I felt safe to soften, because I didn't feel like there was anything to defend myself against.
And that is huge, because ultimately, if you could go into any dynamic realizing that there, at the end of the day, there is nothing that you need to defend. You never need to justify yourself. You never need to explain yourself. You never need to defend yourself. What I do ask of people is that we communicate with one another. That's different. And people think that they're communicating when they're justifying their behavior. You don't need to justify your behavior. There's absolutely no reason for it. There's no benefit to it. Are you looking at Julie's thing?
Yeah.
Your mouth just dropped. How'd I know? Before we get to Julie's, I want to talk about her second statement, and then we can circle about it if that's okay.
Okay.
She said, it's so funny that you say about what we say about laughter, and it came to me clear that I must learn to laugh again or die. Before you go, I just want you guys to know that one of the primary things that Justice said to me when we were even considering doing a workshop is it has to be fun and it has to be simple and we have to laugh. And one of the things that I really respect and appreciate is there is not a conversation that she and I have where one or the other or both of us aren't laughing our asses off. And that's vital.
Yeah, we had this really intense conversation, and at the end of it, I'm like, I said something super fucking vulgar, right? Like, because that's where I go, and that is one of my primary like adherence is that like vulgarity and enlightenment go hand in hand. The mud and the shit and the sparkle and the unicorns all play together, or it's not real. Okay. Julie says, I found a butterfly cocoon and hatched it. Her wings didn't open and she wouldn't ever fly. She died in a huge atrium cage that lightning struck through the window. But I got to feed her and spend time with her for weeks. Another cocoon was found. It didn't hatch. Days later, another crumply winged butterfly called me to look left and find. I did. Its abdomen was ruptured and it didn't live long. There was something living in its abdomen like a parasite. 3 in a row in a short period, such powerful medicine. Yeah, my whole, like, everything is standing on end. My whole everything is standing on end. This is something that I would want to unpack with you like a dream, like a waking dream, because it is so packed with symbolism. And when I look at this entire thing, there, like the lightning striking the cage really gets my attention because Vajra Valasi, flirtatious lightning, it's a symbol for divine feminine. When the lightning speaks, when she talks to us, we fucking pay attention. You have to pay attention. The other thing that really gets my attention out of this is the parasite. And the parasite, I'm going to go on a tiny little tangent, but it's relevant. The parasite, as it speaks to me, and you and I, Julie, have talked about this, and I've talked a lot about this, Wetiko, which is a psycho-spiritual parasite that's kind of infected the human psyche. And yet the thing about it is that it co-arises with the awakening of consciousness. So it actually works in a collaborative fashion. So consciousness wakes up, the parasite gets activated. The parasite gets activated, it brings awareness to consciousness. They communicate with each other. And very often when we are in our triggers is also an indication that Wetiko is present. And Wetiko's objective is to isolate, agitate, and how would I say this? It's to agitate and to isolate, essentially.
Catalyst.
Well, yes, it acts as a catalyst, but from like a narcissistic standpoint per se, right? Like a narcissist's goal is to sort of get you away from your resources, to sort of isolate you where it can feed off of you more effectively. It's the same thing. That's what Wetiko does. So when we are triggered and we don't actually take the time to pay attention to that underlying need, which is often deeply representative of our inner child, we will often choose instead to armor up and isolate and attack back. And that is when that consciousness, that parasitic consciousness, witiko, that's when that really comes in. And it can either act as a catalyst for awareness and intimacy within our relationships, or it can act as a massive divisive distraction. And if you look at the way that it's kind of played out over the last year, it's been super, super active. The divisiveness has been super active, right? And where we're trying to move now, and where like the work that we're doing together, the work that we're doing individually, is to sort of help people come back to this sense of connection with themselves and with each other, and to this greater place of intimacy. And that is, you know, intimacy is taking care of ourselves. It's I wrote it in the description earlier. It's I want to see you. I want to hold you. I want to be seen and I want to be held. I want to hear you. I want to listen to you. I want to care for you and I want to be cared for, right? There is this reciprocity that is innate, that is inherent to intimacy, that the parasitic consciousness is not capable of, and it's not capable of withstanding.
That's huge. And it is so, and our traumas will often tell us, as much as we want to care for somebody or be cared for, it'll tell us, armor up, bitch, because I ain't letting you in and you ain't getting in. And it is really, really important to say, you know what? I trust myself. Meaning, not that I trust the other person not to hurt me, not that I trust that I'm not going to experience pain, but instead that I trust through pain, internally, externally, that I'm okay. I have the strength, the presence, the groundedness, the recognition of self, that I know that it's weather and I can withstand any weather that's going on. And that's huge. I want to talk a little bit to Julie too. So I was out going to the reservation 2-3 weeks ago. And one of the things that I will often do when I'm out there is I'll hike through the Saguaro Desert. And I will look specifically for saguaros, the big, big cactus that go up like the kind you see in cartoons. I will look for those that have been hit by lightning. I will get a stick, or I'll see if they want to offer a stick for me from that cacti that has been hit by lightning, because those are the ones that you make talking sticks out of. The energy, go ahead.
Just love like what?
The energy of that feminine, striking it, transforming it as only the feminine can, and then giving it a solidity that the masculine from the earth gives it, in congress with one another, allows the communication to flow through, which is why the way I was taught, you choose only those sticks. So I look at your story, your life that you shared with us, and find it incredibly powerful. It's the lightning, the 3 times, it is the butterflies specifically, and understanding that just because a butterfly is born does not mean that it does anything beyond exist. That becomes a personal process, a personal choice. And, you know, to be a little bit, you know, self-promoting, it's an inner journey. And that's one of those things that I think you're really being told more than anything through this experience, is that there are versions of you that need to individuate. There are versions of you that need to congeal and become whole, and none of them have a guaranteed life. That life happens as you take the personal responsibility to breathe into it and to choose Choose the life that you want to manifest, not because anybody else says it's appropriate.
Mm. There's another component that I want to bring in that I think is also actually still relevant to you, Julie, from your story that Clarissa Pinkola Estes talks about is the swallows bloom. And they take years to fucking get there. They are the late bloomers. And sometimes those of us who bloom the latest bloom the most spectacularly.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. And by the way, she knew you were going to mention Watiko. And she thanked you for that last statement. Yeah, so you guys, we're getting close to that point. So if you have any other questions for us or anything that you'd like to share. Julie also said, I feel like that cactus.
Yeah. I see you, babe.
If there's anything else you'd like to share or like to ask us, jump on in right now, because we're going to start heading towards the other end of this spectrum. The thing is that I see us doing through this talk today: safety, be safe, physically, mentally, spiritually, take the time to be safe, which also leads to trust. When you're doing your own inner journey, trust that you have the strength and that you are safe and that you are blooming. And it's going to take the time that it takes for you to bloom in the way that is specific to your journey. And if you compare, Einstein said that if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, and I don't need to finish that. If you compare how you bloom to how anybody else is blooming and what they're doing, it is an inappropriate comparison, because you are the flower with the roots and the sunshine and the history and the ancestry that you are, and nobody else, not even your twin brother, not even your sister, not your mother, your uncle, nobody else is you. And you ain't no snowflake, but you are beautiful. And so's your process.
And co-arising with your need for safety is your need to take risk.
Yes.
You know, we look at children, infants, toddlers. My granddaughter, I'm watching her, you know, grow. And she's safe scooting around on the floor. You know, she knows it. She knows her relationship with gravity at that level. It's a risk to stand up. It's a risk to reach for, you know, it's a risk for her. She'll pull herself up next to my dishwasher and she'll play with my magnets, but it's a risk for her to take those few steps between the dishwasher and the pantry. And there's a chance that because she's developing her relationship with gravity that she's not going to make it. She's going to stumble. She's going to fall. We don't shame children when they fall. We don't shame them for being messy. We don't shame them for not getting it right. And we need to offer ourselves that same kind of grace, to prioritize our safety the way that only we can, because only we know what we truly need, to learn to trust others to meet us in that need and that mutuality and that reciprocity, and to take the risk to get there, to get from that place where we're comfortable to where we're not comfortable, to where we're doing something new and we're fucking soaring.
Yep. I couldn't have said it better. It's gorgeous. You know, I say this every week, either on the show and now on our show as it is. What we do doesn't exist without all y'all. And I am incredibly, incredibly grateful that you decided to tune in to us and that you decided to participate with us. And I want you to know, speaking from myself alone, my life is better because of you guys showing up and participating. So thank you.
Thank you, Greg, for being here. And please let everybody know how to go hold of you.
The show is Sunday evenings from 7 to 9 p.m. It's called Inner Journey with Greg Friedman. On social media, you can find me putting in a search for Greg Friedman or Inner Journey with Greg Friedman. And the website, funny enough, is called gregfriedman.com. Yeah, and my life has changed dramatically for the better in ways that I cannot even begin to articulate since I've started working with you. So thank you. And how are they going to get a hold of you?
Well, dear Facebook, social media family, whom I really, truly do love with all of my heart, you enrich my life and you let me into yours, and you trust me. You trust me with some of your deepest, scariest, most sacred places, and I just can't tell you how fucking honored I am for it. And what a joy and a delight and pleasure it is, an honor for me to be able to share at least some of those places from within myself with you via my writing on Elephant Journal at Profile Justice Bartlett, and through my website at illuminationwithjustice.com, on my YouTube channel, Illumination with Justice, and on my Facebook page, which I prolifically pour my heart out into and talk mass shit. So if we're not already friends, please do friend me, send me a message so I don't mistake you as being spam. I am all about doing these for the intention and purpose of building community. That's kind of my gig, to communicate with clarity and compassion about the hard, holy, and human.
And if they want to get a hold of us for the workshop?
You can contact us through either one of our websites, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or messages privately.
And she being Justice, has an article coming out next month in Radiance magazine that is, I've read a lot of stuff that y'all have written, that Justice has written, and this to me is possibly my favorite thing to date. It is a beautiful, beautiful piece of writing that is not only entertaining but incredibly illuminating. Look for it. We'll keep you posted.
And it speaks to why we're doing this retreat, to create illuminate and create, practicality and groundedness around the dynamics between the masculine and feminine, and our yearning.
And have fucking fun with it.
Yeah. So we'll be back next Thursday to do more of this with all of you. So until then, peace.
Thank you.